Hello and welcome to Module 3. I hope the last two modules have given you enough understanding in terms of what problem you want to solve, who are your ideal customers. You've spoken to a few customers, you've identified the major idea space or the problem space that you're going after. You've had the time to validate your solution. You've had the time to think about how you can innovate in your market. And now, with all of that knowledge, now is the time to start building. But before we start building, do we build the entire product? Do we build the final full feature, full stack tech product? Or if you're doing a physical product, do we go into full on manufacturing? Do we invest a lot of money in setting up manufacturing? What if you don't have that kind of money? In fact, even if you have that kind of money, it's better to start off with an MVP. And that's the topic of today's module, right? MVP is a word which has been thrown around a lot. Today, we break it down and understand what it actually means and how you can create your MVP. To give you an overview, we're going to be covering what is an MVP, why it's important. We're going to understand the different types of MVPs. We're going to see a few examples of some of the best companies of the world, of India, who started off by creating MVPs. Some of those brands are probably very familiar. Most of you might have heard of them. We're going to see how they did it. Then we're going to deep dive into the different type of MVPs that you can select for your particular idea. We're going to understand what are success metrics that we got to track, because if you're not tracking what it means to be successful, then there's no point, right? And finally, we'll come up with a strategy for your MVP. In the words of Reid Hoffman, who's the founder of LinkedIn, if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product, you've launched too late. And I deeply resonate with it. A lot of founders make the mistake of starting to develop their product, putting in 5-6 months, putting in tons of money to create a perfect version of the product, a very polished version with all the features working, only to realize that no one is actually using them. Only to realize that they've built something wrong, only to realize that they've invested time and money into something that might not actually make them money. How do we solve this problem? We solve this problem by creating an MVP. In simple words, an MVP is a minimum viable product. Minimum meaning it is the most stripped down version of your final product. It solves one or two core problems that your user is facing without adding tons of additional features right now. I'm not saying you won't add them in the future. All I'm saying is right now is the time to actually test your solution with the people. So whatever feedback you've gotten up until now in the process, take that feedback and create a list of features that you want to create. And out of those all features, what is that one or two features that will actually move the needle, that will actually solve the problem for the user? We'll go deeper into this. We'll understand how it's done. Viable in the sense that it needs to make sense. This can't be some random thing that can't happen. It has to make sense monetarily for you, for your users. And by the end of it, it has to be a product. It just cannot be a wireframe anymore. It has to be something usable. What are the key characteristics of an MVP? As I said, it's got just enough features that solves the problem. The reason why we do this is to understand who our early customers are going to be and to satisfy their demands. And one of the key features of an MVP is that it will allow you to get enough feedback from your early adopters to create a roadmap for the next features that you want to develop. Right? It's not going to be what you want, it's going to be based on what customers want. So which is why we give the customers something to play with, and obviously they're not going to be 110% satisfied, but even if they're 30% satisfied, they will tell you what they need next in order to reach that 100% satisfaction level, and that gives you a roadmap for the next features that you want to develop in your product. I also believe MVP is not just a product, but also a mindset. Why I say this is because This is not just something that you do in the early parts of your entrepreneurial journey. This is something that you continue doing even when you have reached a certain scale and you want to launch new product lines, new features, new modules, anything that you want to do, think of it from an MVP perspective. Don't directly jump into development, but think of it from an MVP perspective. What is it that you can start launching, give to users, gain feedback, and then develop further? That's the basic concept of an MVP. You might have heard of these words, right? A prototype, a POC, a MVP. All of them are very similar, but there are some differences between all of them. So let's understand what are the differences between a prototype versus a POC versus an MVP. If we look at it from a usage perspective, a prototype is used to showcase some kind of design. A POC is used to showcase technical feasibility of your product. And an MVP is actually used to test the market and gather feedback. In terms of the target audience, a prototype is used majorly for internal audiences, majorly for showcasing within the internal teams and to understand whether something looks good or things like that. A POC is again used by internal teams or given to experts for them to give their feedback, versus an MVP, which is majorly used by external audiences, by your early adopters. Right? In terms of functionality, a prototype will be majorly non-functional or very limited functionality. A POC will test particular features of your product, not the entire range of the features. And an MVP will be functional, but again with very limited number of features, those that actually solve some real pain points. In terms of success metrics, a prototype is usually used to judge whether an idea looks good, feels good, something like that. Right? Once you have something, it's always better to make changes to that. A POC, again, since it's been used to check the technical feasibility, the success metric is, can we actually build the final product? So in order to build the final product, what are the initial technical challenges that we might face? And in order to reduce those challenges, in order to test those hypotheses, we build a POC to understand whether it's technically feasible. And for an MVP, the case is clear, whether the users will use the product, whether it solves their problem, and also if you can test some kind of willingness to pay from them, that'll be a great success metric at this stage. So let's see how some of the best companies of the world actually started off by creating MVPs. Airbnb, right? Heard of the word? Today, a lot of us are Airbnb users. We use it to book our vacation rentals, homestays, things like that across the world. It's scaled like crazy. It was one of the early successes of Y Combinator. But it did not start off by being the Airbnb that we know of today. This is the initial landing page. It was called Airbeds and Breakfast. It was started because of a personal need. Someone realized that they had an extra room in their house. All they did was put up an air mattress. They did not go after the entire audience immediately. They went after very limited set of users. They targeted. There was a conference happening over the weekend in San Francisco, because of which the hotel prices were quite high, and they realized that there were a lot of budget-friendly users who were going to come in, and that's how they started. Right? They wanted to start off by catering to that one very specific niche audience, and we're going to talk about all of this in the next modules, how to define the niche audience, etc. But they went after that one very specific niche audience, created this basic landing page where, in fact, they visited the hosts after that themselves, started clicking pictures themselves. Everything was done very manually. Today, if you want to list on Airbnb, all a host has to do is create the listing, upload photos, features, descriptions, things like that. But back then, the founders did all of this manually, right? That's the point of an MVP. It solved a problem, but most of the stuff that was happening behind the scenes was done manually. There was no payment gateway integration. The host and the guests had to meet in person to make the payments. There was no calendar feature, right? So very, very limited number of features. You could not browse by location. All those map kind of features were not there. So again, very basic. Just launch whatever you can. And today it's very easy. A landing page would probably take you less than half an hour to build. Something like this, you can replicate in less than half an hour. Next, I want to show you a video.
Okay.
A video of Dropbox. Dropbox was one of the early pioneers of a drive kind of a service that would let you store data on the cloud. And instead of building the entire product, they created a small introductory demo video with screenshots of features that might appear in the future. Have a look at the video and then we'll discuss it.
Okay, my name's Drew, and we'll be taking a quick tour of Dropbox, which is a better way of keeping your important stuff synchronized across your PCs. And what makes Dropbox different is that it just works, meaning that there's no complicated setup or configuration. And if you're familiar with development tools, Dropbox is kind of like taking Subversion and rsync and making them easy to use. So here we'll walk through a concrete example. And so I just got a new laptop, and I've got some important files on my desktop that I like to keep synchronized across both machines. And to set up Dropbox, all you really have to do is install the application, which I did a moment ago, and then link it to an account. So I typed in my information there, and it brings me to this web interface where I can see recent changes to the files in my Dropbox. And I can actually get the files directly. So in addition to synchronizing files across PCs, Dropbox also securely backs them up and synchronizes them to the web. So you can click on any of these files and it does what you'd expect, in case you're not at one of your computers. And as far as the Windows interface, it looks like a normal Windows folder except for these green and blue icons indicating whether or not the file's up to date. And Dropbox is done pulling down all of my stuff. And an important idea behind Dropbox is that it fits into the way you already work and synchronizes your files continuously. So I can make a change to a document, so like this text document, and I'll hit save, and actually the change will take effect just as quickly as it can be sent over my internet connection. So if I refresh the page, it'll indicate the change. And it even extends to another computer, so I've got my desktop right here, and if I open that file, I can make a change on my desktop and have it reflect on my laptop. So I'll do that on my desktop here. And when I come back to my laptop, you'll notice there's this notification indicating that the file's been changed, and when I reopen the file, you'll notice this text has changed, and here's a change for my desktop. And likewise, the web interface will change. In addition to this continuous sync behavior, Dropbox also archives past versions of each file. So you can click this revisions option and sort of go back in time. So here's the version we were just looking at, and here's the version we first saved, and so on. And in addition to revision control, there's also some rich sharing features. So one example is this public folder, and every file in your public folder, you just save it there, and it gets an internet link associated with it. So I'll do that one more time. You can copy any link location of a file in your public folder, and you can put this in an IM window or send it in an email as opposed to clogging someone's email box with a huge attachment. And so it works with files of any size. In addition, there are shared folders called workspaces. I won't be able to get to those right during this demo, but one more thing I want to show you is that Dropbox is very efficient about the way it handles changes to files. So it only sends the pieces of files that change. So other tools might do this with text, but here we'll do it with a binary file. So there's this picture, and if I make a small change to the picture, so I'll pick this gross pink color here and change a portion of the image. It's a little hard to visualize, but digging under the hood, I can show you that Dropbox only sends the piece of the file that changed. So this saves over 90% of the bandwidth, as the patch is 10% of the size of the original file, and it will continue to store these sort of differential changes. And you can see that what is transmitted is much smaller than the original file. And you can also see that these changes are reflected immediately. Okay, so this makes it feasible to work with files that are gigabytes in size, even if you have a comparatively slow internet connection. And with that, we'll wrap up. And the service is currently in private beta, but if you'd like to check it out, please visit getdropbox.com and you can sign up. Thanks.
right? So that's it. This small video that was uploaded on their YouTube channel got them 75,000. From 5,000 to 75,000, they went overnight in terms of people who were waiting to sign up for them. And that is what led them to ultimately build the product. Once they got the feedback that there is demand, people are going to, if so many people are joining the waitlist, that definitely proves that there is a demand. And that's when they started building the product. Very simple. That's international brands. But if you look at some of the top popular Indian brands, let's talk about Zepto, the brand that most of us use today. The Blinkits, the Zeptos of the world were not born overnight. How did Zepto start? During COVID, two interesting people realized that people in their neighborhood, in their society, wanted to order stuff. Because of COVID restrictions, it was tougher. They created a small WhatsApp group where people could put in a list of things that they wanted. These two guys would go to the grocery store, pick up the things, and deliver to their neighbors. That's how Zepto started. Not the giant that we know of today, not the billion-dollar giant that is popular across India, expanding like crazy, scaling up like crazy with their dark store model. All those things were developed much later. All the features kept adding much later. Right? They started with the WhatsApp community. The idea is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel when you're starting up. You can pick up what is working, probably rebrand it, white label things. And that's actually how Bira started. The popular beer brand in India, which has grown like crazy again, did not manufacture its own beer initially. It imported beer from Belgium, white labeled it, put its own packaging, gave it to the customers. Saved a lot of cost in setting up their own manufacturing units, because that would have, one, taken a lot of time, a lot of money. Then they had to perfect the recipe. Why not go to someone who already has the recipe, who's perfected that, who has a supply chain ready? All you got to do is pick it up from them, rebrand, position yourselves, create distribution. Today, it's not your product that wins the market, it's usually the distribution. How fast can you penetrate the market? And once Bira started getting that traction, getting that pull from the market, is when they launched their own manufacturing facilities. That's when they shifted manufacturing. If you look at the top 5 RO companies in India, they still do not manufacture their units. They import it from China and white label it. It's a game of distribution today. So again, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. At the start, understand, I was speaking to someone recently and they wanted to launch a brand of pickleball rackets, Indian-made pickleball rackets. I told them there's no point investing 5 to 6 CR as an initial investment in setting up the facility without understanding whether the people will actually buy it or not. The easier option was to import something from outside, from trusted manufacturers who are building something, and then use that. And when you do something like this, there are always going to be trade-offs, right? There are going to be trade-offs between the price, quality, and speed. In my experience, you can choose 2 of these. If you want something quick, you might have to compromise on the price, right? Let's take an example. You want a cake. You want a cheap cake. What do you compromise on? You have 2 options. Either you can compromise on the quality or you can compromise on the speed. You can go to the local bakery, which might not give you the best quality. Or you could wait for the end of the day when the best bakeries have a 50% discount. So if you want the price, you might have to let go of either the quality or the speed. Similarly, for your products, it is okay. My suggestion at the early stage would not be to compromise with speed. If you can do something fast, that's always a better option. So you might want to compromise with either the quality or the price, right? If you have the money, go ahead, get something amazing built, which has good quality, and it can happen faster. If you don't want to compromise on the price, if you want to be frugal on that, which again is a very good strategy, then you compromise on the quality. It's okay to give out something which is not a best product, But again, that will get you some understanding whether people are actually using it. And when they're using it, they'll give you feedback in terms of what they want you to improve. And that's when you can start building something much better. Right. So now we understand what an MVP is, why it's important, what are some of the key characteristics of MVP, what are the trade-offs, how some of the best companies of the world did it. So now let's understand, how do you create an MVP? In order to create an MVP, you can follow some very basic steps. The first step is, again, to define your user journey. In the last module, we created a user persona. You know what your user does every day. We understood from our first module what a value chain looks like. Now you combine the two of them. You understand what your user looks like. You understand what he does in order to get the goods or services that he's currently doing. Right? So you define your user journey. Then you define how your user is going to use your product. So you again go back to the drawing board. Once you have that, you can create a list of all the features. Again, there's no right or wrong answer here. List as many features that you want to create, right? In your final version of your product, what all it will do, list all of those things. Then use a framework which we call the should have, could have, and won't have features. And I'll give you, again, a matrix that you can use to identify which one of these features you want to put in the should have, could have, and won't have categories. Finally, you estimate the costs and check for any low-hanging fruits. Low-hanging fruits is something that can be done fast, that can be implemented immediately or in a very short duration of time. Before you move ahead, estimate a timeline that is going to take for you to develop those features. Give it to the market. Budget for that. Include some amount of budget for marketing it to the people. And also remember that this is just the first product. So your entire budget cannot go into this. You need to keep some kind of a budget for iterations, because there are going to be iterations. So how do we categorize our features list? This is a very simple 2x2 matrix. On one axis, you have how much effort you're going to put into product development, and on the other hand, you have the impact of that feature. Anything that does not create impact, despite the fact that it might require very less effort on your part, you put it in the won't have category. You select the high impact, low effort feature and put it into the should have category. These are the features that will actually move the needle, that will actually solve the problem, and it does not take a lot for you to develop these. And on the yellow pattern, we have the could have features. These are the good to have features. These are again high impact, but might require a lot of effort, maybe in terms of time, maybe in terms of money. So whatever is in, now you have your entire list of features, you've categorized them. This is where you start. You start off with the should have features. If they solve the problem, you give it out to the market. If they don't, then you move to the could have features. If they solve the problem, you give it out to the market. If there are, again, some features in the low impact category that might move the needle, only do it if it is very low effort. In fact, I would not suggest you to do this, because if there are those features which are not creating enough impact, then you're thinking it wrong, right? Then they need to be in a different space. If those are the features that are actually moving the needle, then they're high impact and not low impact. Right? So that's the order that you follow in terms of what features that you develop first for your MVP. What happens after the MVP is based on user feedback. But before getting user feedback, you want to give them something based on the initial feedback that you got from them in the first validation phase that we did. So what does an MVP actually achieve? What are the questions that you might want to answer after you've launched the MVP? So you want to understand whether the people will actually use your product. That's the first thing that you want to answer. Do they want it? Or is the idea worth pursuing? Once you launch your product, you will have more clarity. Once you launch your MVP, you will have much more clarity in terms of whether this opportunity is worth your time to be pursued. Right? Then you want to understand whether people will use it. You want to understand what are the minimum features needed to make this viable, to start making money of this. What are the minimum set of features? Your users will tell you that, right? What is it that they're willing to pay for? And finally, you also want to have some understanding of whether those users will continue to use your product. That's the beauty of SaaS products or products that have repeat users, because today customer acquisition cost is skyrocketing. Most companies actually make money when the users come back to them and not on the first order. So if you have some products that can have users come back to you again and again, that also you can test with your MVP. Now, while we're talking about testing, we end up coming up with metrics. There are a lot of metrics that we can track, and we will cover that, the different metrics that we're going to be tracking in our GTMS module. But just to give you an understanding, there are two major types of metrics. One are real metrics and one are vanity metrics. Vanity metrics give you an ego boost. Real metrics actually move the needle of your business. I'll give you a few examples, right? So you created something, your website traffic, the number of downloads on your app, those are vanity metrics. That's not a business metric. That's not proving success of your business, right? Your business is successful when you start making money. So a real or an actionable metric would be how many of those users who are coming to your website are actually converting into paid customers. Similarly, you start posting on social media. The number of likes, shares might give you an ego boost, but those are again vanity metrics. You want to understand how many of your users are getting retained. What are the daily active users on your app, on your website? What are the monthly active users? How many people stay? Again, emails sent to users. You can have 1,000 emails that you send to your users every day, to random people. You can spam as much as you want. But if they're not converting, then it becomes a vanity metric. No point of tracking vanity metric. You want to understand the bounce rate. How many people are coming to your website and dropping off without going to a second page? Or you want to understand the session duration. Because these metrics will actually give you some insights. Why are people bouncing? At the early stages, you can put heat maps on your website to track user behavior. What is the exact point where they clicked? What is where they clicked to scroll? What is the button that they clicked that actually converted? What is the text before that prompted them to actually finally hit the sign up button? So all of those things you can track with a heat map. India is a big country. You might have goals of getting 40% of India's market share, or in fact 40% of the world market share of your product. And you might want to expand crazy. You want to launch in multiple cities. But that is not the best metric to track immediately, right? Because launching in multiple cities does not really give you enough. Instead, you can track a NPS, which is a net promoter score, out of the people who are coming to your website. Once you ask them, how likely are they to recommend your product to other people? That will give you more insights, more actionable, real insights, right? You can have qualitative, quantitative surveys of usability, things like that you can start tracking at an early stage. That's more important. That's a real actionable metric that you should be tracking. Okay, now let's understand what are the different types of MVPs that you can create. The first one is a fake door. What is a fake door? Well, basically, you have something, but behind that there is nothing. The fake door is just the front end, a basic landing page. Behind it, nothing works. What you're actually testing over here is demand. You want to understand whether people actually want your product. So you basically create a landing page with a button or some kind of advertisement that you can create for your product and see how many users click it. You can have some features in the coming soon category and see if people sign up to use those features. You can ask people to sign up for email newsletters to be updated when the feature is getting launched. Again, this will give you enough understanding whether people want something, and then you can go ahead and develop the ones where there is more demand. A good example of this would be a company called Buffer, which is a social media, which was in fact Before Instagram gave you the option to schedule posts, it was very tough. So Buffer created this payment and pricing page with a basic features and a basic payment and pricing page. When you clicked on signing up, they gave you sorry, this feature is currently not available, or this feature is in beta. To use it, write to us, sign up, or things like that. Again, very smart. You just gave a landing page with the features to test the demand. Once you see the demand, you create the actual product. So that's a basic fake door MVP. Similar to a fake door, you can again have a basic landing page. It's very similar. Dropbox did this. They created a landing page, a video, and again, the difference is that over here you have CTAs, you measure interest, and you build a list of early adopters that might want to use your product in the future. The next category of MVPs is a concierge service, right? What do we mean by a concierge? So instead of automating the backend, automating the solution, you do the backend on your own. You launch the products, people can actually place orders, but how things are happening on the backend are not automated yet. You can do that today. It's very easy to, in fact, automate a lot of things. But if you want to launch it immediately, launch it very fast without investing too much time, taking up premium subscriptions, things like that, you can do this. So a company called Zappos was very famous for doing this. It was a shoe delivery brand, which basically what they did, the founders were very smart. They went around to their neighborhood shops and clicked pictures of shoes. Instead of launching a full-scale e-commerce website, they created a landing page. People could place orders. You could come, look at the shoes, the images that they'd uploaded, and once you placed an order on the back end, nothing actually worked. So the founders went to the shoe shops, picked up the product, and manually shipped it. Very simple, right? You don't have any kind of investment in inventory, no tie-ups, no third-party payments, things like that. So very simple. You take payments from the users and do the stuff on the back end manually. And in this case, the users were given the option. They could actually either go to the store, pick it up, or someone would send it for them. So the users are aware that the things happening on the back end are being done manually. The difference between a Wizard of Oz, which is our next category of MVPs, and the concierge is that in the Wizard of Oz, the user is actually not aware that the backend is being done manually. Right? A lot of early stage food delivery apps actually did this. You placed an order on the food delivery app, and instead of the order actually going to the restaurant, because you need a lot of integrations and things like that for that. So instead of doing that, you place an order on the website, the team on the back end would manually place the order from the restaurant, and magic, you will get it at your home. You don't know the back end is being done manually. Very simple. Again, that's the only difference between a concierge and the Wizard of Oz. The next is a minimum lovable product. Minimum lovable product is actually used when you want to create a little bit of emotional connection with your users. It goes a step above the MVP. It includes the minimum features, yes, but it also tries to deliver a product that delights the users. You want to create a little bit of emotional connection with your users. You want to make them feel good. So this is why it's called a minimum lovable product. Instagram actually launched as a minimum lovable product. Initially, it was just a photo sharing app, right? It did not have the reels and all those things that we have today. The reason why we use Instagram back in the days was very different from why we use it today. It was initially just a photo sharing app with a very simple UI and a very easy to use interface, and that created a little bit of emotional bond, and people were actually loving what they used. So Instagram started off as a minimum lovable product. Next, you have the pre-order category. A lot of times, especially when we are building physical products which require, let's say, some investment in initial inventory, and you don't have that initial investment in inventory, you can create a prototype of your product or create mock-up images of how your product is going to look like, put it on a website like a Kickstarter or a product hunt or things like that, where people can fund your product development if you reach a certain benchmark, if you reach a certain goal. Let's say you say, if I sell 500 units of this product, I will actually manufacture it. People come to the website, they place an order, they put in the money. If by, let's say, the deadline, you don't reach the 500 product goals, the money is refunded back to the users. If you do reach the product sales goal by that deadline or before that, you go into manufacturing and then you later ship out the products to your users. Again, a great way to start. Tesla Cybertruck actually started off like that. They showcased the product and collected $100 pre-orders from people and delivered much later. So what MVP that you want to choose depends on multiple criteria. If you want to test early idea validation, you might want to go for a fake door or a landing page MVP. If you want to test customer engagement, you can go for a concierge or a Wizard of Oz MVP. If you want to create an emotional bond with your users, you can create a minimum lovable product. And if you want to fund your production and want to get some commitment from your users in the future, right now, you can go for a pre-order MVP. As I said, iteration is a very important part of your MVP. What you deliver, the first thing that you go to the market with might not be what they are looking for. So you have to come back to your drawing board a lot of times, think of the process. And iteration usually takes about a week to 10 days of good user feedback, of them working with your prototypes, working with your MVP, understanding what is breaking, understanding what is the feature that they want next. So all of this is very iterative. The speed at which things can be developed today is much faster, but you should spend more time with your users again at this point of time so that you can actually see the journey that they are going through. What is the point at which they are getting frustrated by using the product? What is the point at which they are getting delighted by using your product? So if you can sit in front of your users while they are using your product at this stage, that will give you a lot of feedback that you can again come back, iterate, change your product, go back to the users and again delight them. You want to keep a budget in place for your MVP development. It's not just the initial product that you're launching, it's the iterations and the GTM that you want to factor into this. Let's put this actually to use. Let's do a little bit of a case study. Here is a case study. Why don't you read it? And once you're done, we'll move on to the next part. Feel free to pause the video over here while you read, and then we'll move on to understand how a company like Mealmate can launch an MVP. Okay, so you're one of the founding team members of Mealmate, and they want to create a digital solution aimed at simplifying meal planning for busy individuals. Very clearly articulated. And let's understand what are going to be the steps to create an MVP for this. So what, according to you, is the problem statement over here? What is Mealmate actually solving? Well, it's solving the fact that busy individuals don't have time for meal preparation. How can we simplify that? Very simple. And what is their solution? They want to create a product that helps busy individuals create a basic meal plan. Who are going to be some of the early adopters? I'm guessing a small nuclear family where both the partners are working, or maybe have small kids to take care of, busy lifestyle, fast lifestyle, don't have time, people who travel a lot. Those could be early adopters. Let's understand what could be some of the key features. Pause the video over here, and why don't you write down on a piece of paper what could be some of the key features of this app. Okay, So according to me, here are some of the basic key features that the app could have. Right? They could have a basic meal recommendation, obviously. Customizable meal plans, users can input whether they're vegetarian, they're on some kind of a diet, to get weekly planners. The app could also generate uh, shopping list for the users based on the ingredients that they want to put into the meals. It could get integrated with grocery delivery apps, quick commerce apps for faster delivery. It could give nutritional insights in terms of the calorie count, the protein count for the health conscious people. You could review recipes, you could rate recipes, and that could again be used to showcase those recipes as popular recipes to other people. You could have a feature for social sharing, and then you could also gamify the product in terms of people could earn rewards for sticking to a meal plan, or upload photos, or get some kind of interaction, again to increase the interaction that the people have, the usability, the daily usage, things like that, that you can get people to use your app a lot more. So the process could be gamified a lot. Again, that's a lot of features, and I'm sure you might have more feature options, some that could be amazing that I might have missed out, but this is something that I could come up with, right? If we were to categorize these features on the basis of should have, could have, and won't have, how would you categorize them? Basic meal recommendations. I think that's a easy, low-hanging fruit, and it will have a high impact. So should probably be a should have feature. Again, please remember that we are trying to limit the number of features that we are going to launch with. All of them look amazing. And if we have an app with all those features, it's amazing. But we're looking at just the MVP. So from an MVP perspective, what are the 2 probably or 3 maximum features that you would put in the should have category? For me, it's going to be meal recommendations, nutritional insights, because again, that's easy. And that's it. Those are the only 2 features that I would launch the app with. What are the could have features? Recipe rating, social sharing, because again, that gives you more traction if people are sharing it with others. Customizable meal plans, maybe, sure. And shopping list generator. I'll give that to a should have, to a could have. What I will definitely not have in my MVP would be integrations with grocery delivery apps. Would be a gamification feature. Those are absolutely low impact features that will need a lot of effort, and there is no point putting it into the MVP. And what could be a good MVP type for this kind of a product? A fake door, or a basic landing page that you can use. That's it. That's all you need. You don't need a complex app. You don't need native coding. And what, according to you, would be good success metrics for this? I feel the best success metric would be how many users are coming back to the landing page every day, or how many meal plans are being generated per day. Those are the 2 features that you might want to track to gauge initial demand at this stage of the app. Okay, so now you understand what it actually means to create an MVP for someone else's product. Let's understand what it's going to take, what's going to be the strategy for your product. So here are the steps that you want to follow. Define the problem statement. Understand who are going to be your early adopters. list down all the key features, divide it into a should have, could have, and won't have category, decide the type of MVP that you want to have, understand what are going to be the initial marketing channels that you're going to be using, whether it's your network, whether you're going to go door to door, whether you're going to run ads initially, and finally decide what are the initial success metrics going to look like for you. So create your MVP plan today, list down everything, and share it with us if you feel that you need some feedback. If you have any doubts, questions, feedback for us, we're more than happy to help. We're more than happy to listen, and your feedback helps us improve. If you need more help in developing an MVP that requires a lot more features, you can join our venture studio. Fill out the application form. You can go and visit our website. We take about 5 founders every month and we help them go from an idea to actual traction. We bring in the expert team that knows how to use the AI tools very well today, and we can help you power your MVP quickly. But again, do give it a try yourself. If you're getting stuck somewhere or need hand holding, reach out to us and we'll be happy to help. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next module.